Sorry for the delay. First things first, I know that's been a long anticipated announcement and I should have been ready to go right when it was announced, but it was 7 a.m. So I wanted to knock that out. It's 5 hours after it got officially announced by Nebraska, but thank you for being here anyway. And I wanted to respect college football today. I think that's the main thing. We're still in the middle of the football season. I've still got to appreciate and enjoy what we've got with the Michigan-Ohio State game, the Clemson-South Carolina game, and everything else. And I can't just run to talk about this hire since we obviously got to talk about it yesterday, and this was something we knew was going to happen, so I've already put some content out about it. But either way, thank you for being here now, even though we're 5 hours after the announcement actually came, or 6 hours later. Either way, today's been a fantastic day of football, and my spirits are lifted. Not only because I've been winning bets, but because I feel like the new chapter is officially here. We got to hear from Matt Rhule talk on College Game Day this morning, and we have a coach. You saw him pop up on the screen when Kirk Herbstreit was talking to him, and it's Matt Rhule's face, and then right under, you've got the little lower third that has the Nebraska logo, Matt Rhule, head coach. As much as Nebraska fans have been divided on this topic, on this coach specifically, I think this is a good hire. I've had my, comments in the past about wanting to make sure we get a great hire as opposed to an average hire or a good hire, mediocre hire. And I implied that maybe he was just a good hire and not a great hire. I still believe that to be true. but I'm not sure that a great hire exists like I thought there would be before. I think that Urban Meyer was a great hire. I think that he's an unattainable goal for a lot of schools right now. I think he's got a very specific destination. And any other coach that we had talked about who Nebraska was actually in talks with, maybe they aren't as great of a fit as we thought. And Trev probably does know what he's doing. So I think it's important we throw that narrative out now and we go forward. There's been another comment, and I'm going to address this. Let me first tell you guys this. I'm working on a video that's going to be detailed. It's going to have all the pros and cons, essentially, what we're getting with Matt Rhule, the background, what I like about him, what this means for the future of the team, what it means for Mickey Joseph. All of that's going to be packed into a video that I'm working on today. It's just going to take me some time to get through it because I'm trying to watch college football at the same time. So let me just tell you that before we get in here. The reason I'm here right now is to get through chat, to talk to you guys, get some of your thoughts on it. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page and understand where this thing's going, and that this isn't, like I said, this isn't a bad hire, because a lot of the negativity I've seen, a lot of the questions I've seen, don't feel like people are that confident in this choice. And I don't think that you shouldn't be confident in this choice. I don't think you should look at this Carolina Panthers stint and say, this is the wrong pick for Nebraska. This isn't the right fit for Nebraska. We need a winner. All these things that I don't think correlate to what Matt Rhule actually is. Because if you look at recent success from a head coach in college football, Matt Rhule has it, right? If that's like one of your main resume check marks, okay? If you want to look at a guy who has worked in the trenches, he's been a defensive line coach, and he understands the importance of building a line, Matt Rhule checks that box. And if you want to look at a guy who understands what it takes to build a culture and who knows what it's like to be strict with his team and his players, and he has to expect and demand the most out of his guys, and he has in the past, and he has to at Nebraska now if he really wants to get this turned around. He's done that throughout his career. So I think there are a lot of things that are positive about Rhule. And just because he hasn't won recently, just because he hasn't had to experiment in the transfer portal yet, just because he hasn't had to navigate NIL yet, doesn't mean that he can't. Matt Rhule's a relatively young guy. He's a forward thinker. If you've watched him speak, if you've read some of the articles about him, which I have started to, I've started to educate myself more on him in these last 3 or 4 days, I think you'll start to realize he checks all of the boxes that we as Nebraska fans would want. It's just a fact. A lot of people are saying, well, Connor, you're just trying to sugarcoat things. And Connor, you're just trying to tell me these things to make me feel better about this hire. And you're feeding me something I don't want and telling me it's okay and patting me on the head and saying you'll like it sooner or later. You'll like it. That's not the truth. The truth is I'm actually a believer in what we've got going on now. So let me explain with Matt Rhule why the narrative that the recent success in the NFL it doesn't matter. All right. You go back and you look at some of these coaches who've been successful in college football, and then they bounced out to the NFL and they came back. They've been tremendously successful when they got back. You can say the same for any coach going forward in the future. I understand the arguments about the NIL and the transfer portal, but like I said just a minute ago, I don't think that matters. I think the learning curve is so small, he's going to be able to figure it out rather quickly. And if he surrounds himself with the right staff who have been in college recently, he's going to get acclimated, and he's going to have no problem taking advantage of that to the highest level and to the level that we need to see at Nebraska if we want to succeed early. So here's the positive about Rhule that I like the most. Before Matt Rhule left Baylor for the NFL, he was not only courted by some of the biggest schools in the country. I think Oregon was a school who was interested in him. Obviously, this year, Auburn was interested in him, and it sounds like he turned Auburn down. That's a big statement, to turn Auburn down, who I would argue is right there neck and neck with Nebraska for the best job available in the country currently, and a legitimate tier 2 school who has equal NIL money, equal facilities, or at least pretty close to. Pretty damn good fan support. Probably not as strong as Nebraska's, but very good over there at Auburn. So it's impressive that he was able to, or that we were able to land him when he didn't want that job. Okay, back on track with what I had said a minute ago. The reason I'm not too worried about the NFL recency is because Matt Rhule was the hottest name in college football before he took that NFL job. He was the hottest name 2 years in a row, actually, because after Temple, he went to Baylor. He was 1-11. Then I think he won 7 games in the second year. After that second year, although he had only won 7 games, NFL teams came knocking fast. Multiple jobs wanted to offer him. Multiple jobs wanted to interview him. And he said no to all of them. He stayed 1 more year at Baylor, was dominant, earned himself a serious paycheck from the NFL. For whatever reason, he decided it was time to take his shot. I don't understand it. I don't know why. He was a really good college coach and wanted to make the jump, I guess. Who knows? None of that matters to me. What I do know is his most recent college teams were extremely successful. And he built them up to be very strong, to be winners. And at the time, if you would have asked any Nebraska fan, if Scott Frost wouldn't have been here, who's a coach that you would want? A lot of them would have said Matt Rhule. The only difference now is people don't want Matt Rhule because of the recent failure in the NFL, which has nothing to do with the future at Nebraska. And it's something you shouldn't even think about or worry about. The NFL success, or the lack of NFL success, sorry, is only a positive on his resume. It will help him in recruiting. It helps him with his relationships because he now has more coaching connections. He's now a bigger name. He's technically not a flashy hire, but he's a flashier hire because more people know who he is because he was one of the top coaches in the world, technically, if you're getting an NFL job, right? Those are all positives, and I'm not looking at any of that as a negative takeaway. One more comment that I saw, I actually screenshotted it on my phone. I wanted to address it. Or was it? Oh, it was the one that said C grade hire and being force-fed something and told we'll get used to it. Nothing to be excited about. Here's why you need to be excited. And even though it feels like a C grade hire because it wasn't one of the top names, this is exciting for Nebraska because we've been fed shit repeatedly. Not intentionally. I don't think that the previous administration hired Scott Frost and said, oh, we're going to hire this bad coach. No. We all thought that was a good hire. Now we're getting something that at the very least is going to provide stability, okay? Nebraska is coming from the dumpster. All right, we are a dumpster fire of a program. We have not won anything meaningful. The last meaningful game we won was yesterday, and before that, there wasn't one you could point to, all right? Because Nebraska is at such a low point, getting any coach in here who can provide the stability, the consistency, and just getting us back to 7 wins and being a disciplined football team is a massive win for Trev Alberts, for this program, for us as fans, and for everyone who's watching Nebraska football. We'll no longer be a doormat. Just start there. This is the floor I'm talking about, not the ceiling, by the way. Our floor has gone significantly higher. With Scott Frost, you thought the floor was a little bit higher than it was, but unfortunately, because of his previous success, if you look back in hindsight, we had no idea what the floor would look like. With Matt Rhule, we do. The floor is 2-year rebuild. He's going to be shitty. It's going to be a 3-4 win season maybe because he's going to do things the right way. He's going to build the team the way he wants to build them. And unfortunately, we're going to have to suffer through that. That's the floor. The ceiling is he comes in right away. He rebuilds the culture. He has the right staff around him. He gets guys in the transfer portal. He spends the NIL money we need to spend. And he ends up with a team who can win 7 games out the gate. Nebraska is not that far off. If you looked at that Iowa game yesterday, did you feel like Nebraska's team was that far off from winning any game this year? We lacked depth. We lacked being consistent with our game plans. Obviously, since we went through multiple coaching changes at different levels and at different times throughout the year. If we can get back to playing sound, fundamental football, and just being the Illinois of the Big Ten West, not the Illinois of today, but the Illinois of, 2 years ago, we're for sure going to get back to 5-6 wins pretty quickly. That's my opinion on it. So the floor talk, like I said, in the first couple years might be low. But I do truly believe this guy's going to be able to guide us back rather quickly and just get us back to being a formidable opponent who can win games, 6, 7 a year as the baseline. And then from there, we can talk about winning championships and contending at a higher level. One more point about this whole coaching thing with looking at the flashy hires. You've got guys like Lane Kiffin who've won recently, Luke Fickell who've won recently, and all the other names that have been thrown around. And then you look at TCU this year, and I know this is an example that we've talked about 100 times. Sonny Dykes has nothing good on his resume. Josh Heupel had very little good on his resume. Josh Heupel's the coach at Tennessee. And these coaches went into schools who have been down, pretty bad recently. TCU, I think, got to 5 wins last year. They had to fire their longtime coach who was pretty good for a while but couldn't keep things going into the Big 12. TCU and Tennessee now have coaches who their fan bases weren't ecstatic about. TCU fans were not jumping for joy when Sonny Dykes got hired, but I can tell you right now they are pumped about Sonny Dykes. Josh Heupel was not the flashy hire who Tennessee fans thought they deserved. They thought they should go bigger, and we're Tennessee, and we should be able to land a big name, just like Nebraska fans feel. And now they've got a coach who is getting them into, serious contention for a playoff. They've had some other issues, and they're not going to be able to compete at that high of a level for the rest of this year, right? But regardless, these coaches, I think the right word is they come in waves. They come and they have times where they're super hot, and they have a little bit colder streaks. And you've got to find the coach and try and get him at his hottest point, right? none of these coaches are going to be great forever. A very small percentage, at least. You don't have very many Nick Sabans. You don't have very many Lincoln Rileys, Urban Meyers. They're few and far between. You're more likely to find a guy who can have a good 10-year run, and then you move on from him when things don't work out anymore and let him try and find his footing somewhere else or get back into his creative mindset. I don't know. But I do know that with Matt Rhule, we're getting something consistent that I believe in. So now that I've given you guys my initial thoughts, I'm going to get through chat. I hope you're happy about this. More so happy about the direction of the team, the direction of the program, less so about being too hung up on the head coach, because this head coach isn't all that this program is. This program is the assistant staff. This program is the players. And the head coach is really just the face who needs to guide them, who needs to make the best decisions for this team going forward. And I believe this guy for sure has all of the tools and is fully capable to do all of those things that we need here. So that's just my initial thought. But I think it's really important we worry about this assistant coaching pool, figure out who the offensive, defensive coordinator are, who the recruiting assistants are, who's going to be on the offensive line and defensive line coaching. I mean, these are all crucial spots where Matt Rhule is not going to have his hand as in it. He's kind of the overview, right? So I'm not as worried about him. I'm feeling good about having that key figurehead in place. But my number one concern is offensive and defensive coordinators. Husker Power, thank you for the $2 super chat. Do you think Mickey will stay or go to Arizona State? It's not his choice to go to Arizona State. Arizona State would have to offer him. Arizona State's likely going to offer Kenny Dillingham, who's the offensive coordinator at Oregon, who was formerly the offensive coordinator, I think, at Auburn. So I don't think he's going to get a Power 5 offer as a head coach. I don't know that Mickey Joseph has done enough in his career. I don't know that he did enough this year. I would be shocked if Mickey Joseph was a Power 5 head coach in this cycle. Do I think Mickey Joseph could get a job somewhere else doing something else? Maybe getting a pay raise? I guess possibly, but I have a really good feeling that Nebraska is going to be willing to pay him a lot of money to stay. He provides a ton of value, as you saw with Trey Palmer today. Trey Palmer ended up announcing he's going to the transfer portal. Well, the only reason Trey Palmer was still on the table, or not transfer portal, I'm sorry, the NFL draft. The only reason Trey Palmer was still on the table to come back next year was because he believed Mickey Joseph might be the head coach. That says something about Mickey. A lot of value there. Anyway, I don't think Nebraska is going to want him to leave, so I think they'll do what they have to do to keep him if Matt Rhule wants him. And that's still yet to be seen. And we don't know if Mickey Joseph wants to coach with Matt Rhule. We don't know what that relationship's going to be like. I've heard all the rumors. I'm not going to address them because some of the rumors come from people's personal texts and all these. I don't know any of the truth. I don't know who these people are, so I'm just not going to touch them. But I see all the same stuff you guys see. I promise you. I don't address them because I only address things that seem likely or seem realistic. Anyway, if Mickey Joseph was to leave, where would he go? Be a position coach somewhere else? That's the most likely. Be a recruiting coordinator somewhere else and get a pay raise because he does both those jobs. Well, he can do the same thing in Nebraska. So yeah, it'll all depend on what he thinks about Matt Rhule and what their relationship is. That's my opinion on the Mickey Joseph thing for now. We'll see how that plays out over the next, I would say, probably 3 weeks. It's probably going to take it might take until January to fill out an entire staff. So brace yourself. We've got another month of this. Jackson, thanks for the 20. What's your thought on Trey Palmer going pro the next day after the Iowa game? And what do you think Casey does with a new head coach? So my thought on the Trey Palmer thing, my thought on a lot of these players is a lot of guys are tied to Mickey. Not a lot, 5 or 6, right? They love Mickey with all their heart, and I totally understand it. I respect it. I appreciate it. I mean, that is awesome to be able to see a relationship between a player and coach that is so damn strong, right? Trey leaving after the Iowa game is strictly because Mickey Joseph wasn't named head coach. And I get it. Trey had a fantastic game against Iowa, and it boosted his stock a ton. And I wish Trey all the success in the world, and I hope he does great. This program is not tied to a player. Do not forget that. This transfer portal will have a ton more players in it. So although Trey's irreplaceable, let's say, we're going to go out and find another guy who can be effective next year. And if Mickey's here, he's going to go out and find another Trey Palmer-like player. So I'm really confident going forward in this staff. I'm really confident in what their abilities are going to be to get guys out of the portal. We've got a ton of NIL money to spend. We've got a fantastic new facility opening. So, yeah, I think Nebraska's going to be just fine no matter what players end up leaving. I wish Trey Palmer well, and that's basically it. I mean, there's not much to say other than it's directly tied to Mickey not being named the head coach, and that's a fact. Are you super serial? Thank you for the 20. He's no Urban, but at the end of the day, he's our new coach, and I'll support him. If he gets the right staff, keeps MJ, and we jump on the NIL train properly, we'll be fine. At least it can't be as bad as the Frost era. That's a fact. This is basically everything I've said. If you want an exact summary of what I've been preaching in the beginning of this video, this is it. He's going to build the right culture as the head coach, and everything will come down to the staff. I really think Mickey Joseph would be a fantastic addition. I think Mickey Joseph would probably work well with Rhule. Rhule's a very strict guy. Rhule wants to make sure his ship is run tight. I'm guessing Mickey, coming from a championship caliber program, and Bill Busch as well, both those guys understand what it takes to win, and whatever program Frost was running wasn't working, and they had their issues with it. This is going to be the opposite of a Scott Frost-led program. Matt Rhule is a disciplinarian. He expects things a certain way. I think Scott Frost is a little bit looser. You could tell by the rumors in his personal life, right? So because of that, I have a lot of faith that Mickey Joseph would fit well with him. But I don't want to make any guarantees because maybe he doesn't, and I just don't know it. So I know nothing about their relationship and how that'll pan out. Mickey might still hold a grudge that he didn't even get entertained for the job. He didn't even get an interview, to my understanding. He might feel some type of way about that. You saw how his wife was pressing hard, saying he wants to be the next head coach, he should be the next head coach, and all that. So maybe he feels some type of way. I don't know. I'm not going to get too deep into that speculation. Everything is on this next staff. If you can build the next staff to have, I'm going to throw random names out there. Don't get excited. But let's say Georgia's co-defensive coordinator, Will Muschamp, who's also their safeties coach, said, I'm tired of being at Georgia and being a co-DC. I belong at a big school, running a big-time defense, and I want to be in charge. Well, hello, Will Muschamp. Nebraska can make you one of the highest paid defensive coordinators in the entire country. Get your ass over here, rebuild the black shirts, and you're in charge. I think he'd work well with Matt Rhule. I'm not sure if they have any prior relationship or if they know each other. I mean, they know who each other are, right? That's an example of a home run hire who would fill out this staff. And if you can do the same thing on offense, hey, the offense and the defensive coordinator being two of the highest paid guys in the country would 100% give you and I confidence, because it's not just about the head coach, it's about the X's and O's. And although Rhule is a bit of an X's and O's guy, the coordinators have their hand way more into it than the head coach ever will, right? Something to think about. Thank you for the 20. Gregory says, fuck Iowa. I mean, we can retweet that one all day. That's a fact. I'm just glad we woke up with an Iowa win. And Justice, thank you for the 5. Rhule has that pro money for coordinators. And what do you think for the money in the contract? $8 to $9 million a year? Well, I don't know what the number is going to be, but it is an 8-year contract, which I was surprised by. I'm not sure how you guys felt about an 8-year deal. 8 years shows that you're pretty damn confident in this hire, right? So, and it might be just the market. Right now, to get a big-time head coach, you've got to give him some sort of a significant guarantee, because the other schools are doing the same thing. Today, we saw that Lane Kiffin gotta not trip up here because I'm always thinking about Lane with Auburn now. Lane Kiffin over at Ole Miss just got an 8-year deal. That's the rumor. I'm not sure if it's confirmed yet, but it's going to be like 8 years for $9 million a year or something. The only way to keep these big-time head coaches is to give them these big guarantees, because that's what the market is offering them, right? So whether you like it or not, yeah, we're in for some years with Matt Rhule. And I mean, hopefully he's the right guy, because that's a long time. The money, when it comes down to it, has got to be market. It's got to be fair in the market. So I don't know any of this to be true. This is just my understanding, my guess, okay? I'm not an NFL guy. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about this. Matt Rhule has a massive buyout in the NFL. They're not going to let him go to Nebraska, get a job where they pay him $5 million a year, and they're going to come in and say, okay, we're going to pay the rest. No. What they're going to say is, you have to get a fair rate from Nebraska. And if you don't get a fair rate, then we're not going to pay you the rest of your buyout, because we're not going to take on the extra $3 million a year that you're owed. You need to go and get $8 million, because that's what you demand. That's what you should be earning as a big-time college football coach. So my guess is Nebraska's going to have to pay him a minimum of $7 million, $7.5 million a year. That's my guess. Let's say they pay him $7 million for 8 years, because maybe that's the reason for the longer contract. Well, 7 for 8 years is what, $56 million? So $56 million there, and then I don't know what the assistant staff pool is going to be. $2 million? I have no idea. I couldn't even guess. So I'm hoping that Trev commits to a big assistant pool. We're getting all this new money from the media rights deal, so we've got to spend it because we've got to get back to winning. And like I said, it's going to be all about who you can get on as assistants. I'm really hopeful. I believe that he's going to take a different approach than Scott Frost did. Scott Frost made, in my opinion, Scott Frost made the mistake of bringing his UCF friends. They were all good coaches, but they weren't Big Ten coaches. They weren't coaches who could compete and develop at the highest level. And we saw that for 4 years straight, and then their time came short. They all were kind of let go. And now you've got guys like Brian Applewhite, Mark Whipple, Mickey Joseph, even Bill Bush, who are, in my opinion, much better position coaches. And they've all done better than any of the coaches we've had over these last 4 years. So hopefully that assistant pool is big enough, and we can go and get a guy, like I said, Will Muschamp, or somebody who has a big name. One other thing was that we had talked about in this last 3 weeks, Lane Kiffin complained a lot about his Ole Miss support staff not being the support staff he needed. He wanted DJ Durkin. They lost. He was their defensive coordinator last year. He lost DJ Durkin to Texas A&M because Texas A&M was willing to spend the money. Nebraska needs to be like Texas A&M. Nebraska needs to say, whatever it takes at all costs, we need to build this right staff. We're not going cheap. If we're going to get the right coach in here, we're going to do this the right way. We're not going to go and let him hire, and I don't know that this is a bad hire, but for example, go and make Joe Brady the offensive coordinator. That's still risky to me. Joe Brady was an offensive coordinator at the Carolina Panthers under Rhule. Now he's a quarterback coach for the Bills, but he's never been a college football offensive coordinator. He was a passing game coordinator, but that doesn't count to me. I don't even know if he called the plays. Maybe he did. I don't know. Regardless, I'd love to go out and get a big name, former head coach or former offensive coordinator who comes with a lot of experience and can win right away. So just my thought on the assistants. Ari says he was surprised by the 8-year deal. 8 years is a long time, man. I think a lot of us were surprised by that. But I have to assume it means that we're going to pay less because it's a longer deal. Eagle Livewire, thank you for the 10. Fix the trenches and get back to the basics. This is what Rhule provides. Rhule comes from the defensive line. He was the defensive line coach for the Giants, for UCLA, for Temple, and I think another one in there. He's a defensive coordinator. And I think he's going to focus on building back the lines because, as we've seen, those have been Nebraska's biggest issues. He understands that. These coaches on staff currently understand that. Trev Alberts understands that. So I think that's something we can look forward to rather quickly, and that's going to be the focus of this offseason. So we'll see how quickly they can get back, but yeah, I'm excited. Adam Fisher, thanks for the $2. Congrats on your hire. My pops is meh. Adam, I can't remember what school you said your favorite school was. And you did tell me, I think you told me your dad wasn't going to be fired up about Rhule. I get it. A lot of people aren't happy with the Rhule news because it's not as flashy of a name. But you've got to understand, he's a face and a figurehead, and all he's here to do is build the culture. And all he's done before at all of his other jobs is built the culture. What more could you ask for? What are you looking for that Matt Rhule doesn't provide? I think that's the best question we ask. What is it that he doesn't have on his resume that you wish he had? Tell me in the chat. I'd love to know. One thing I know people will try to say is that he didn't have any top 25 wins in the Big 12. That doesn't matter. He didn't play any good competition in the Big 12 because there weren't many good teams in the Big 12 during that time. It's like playing in the Big 10 right now. The Big 10 doesn't have any good teams in it outside of the top 3. Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. And even those 3 don't feel too dominant. We watched Ohio State just get worked at home by Michigan, who was an 8-point dog. So the Big 10's weaker, just like the Big 12 was weaker back when Matt Rhule was in that conference. So I'm not too concerned about not winning any top 25 games because he didn't go up against many top 25 opponents. Just a thought. Let's see here. A winning record against good teams, more college wins, win over a ranked team or a Power 5 team with over 8 wins. I get it, but I don't think it's a huge deal because he coached at Baylor and he coached at Temple. It's like if you go back and look at Scott Frost when he was at UCF, what did he provide? What wins did he have that were huge wins? Nothing. He didn't have any huge wins. He might have beaten Memphis when they were ranked. That's it. I mean, I just don't look at that as a big deal when you're not coaching at a powerhouse program. I've got such a good video coming for you later today where I'm going to break down so much information and give you so much insight into Matt Rhule. But he's an analytical guy. He does a lot of research to try and understand how he can get the edge when he's working with a team who's lower on the totem pole than some of these other powerhouse programs. When he has less to work with, how can he utilize basically his brain to beat the system? When he was at Baylor, when he was at Temple, he figured out ways to get the right recruits in who fit, who he could build into NFL players and develop, and who could actually beat some of the heavyweights in college football. He ended up doing that, and he beat Penn State back in, I think, 2013 or 14 at Temple. They had no business being on the same field. I'm sure Penn State was a double-digit favorite. So there are little things that we're going to see from Matt Rhule that make him a smart head coach. And these things he's learned over his career, because he's been coaching for 25 years, are all applicable to what he's now going to go and be dealing with at Nebraska. Just keep that in mind. I would not get too worried about that. Noah says, does Rhule won any big matchup games? You know, he lost to OU twice in the Big 12. They were a playoff team that year. He lost to them by 3 once and by 10 or less the other time. It was a great game. But he was in his third season at Baylor, and he was still building. So, yeah, I mean, I get it. The 47-43 record. But he never stayed at a school longer than 3 years. Keep in mind, I was off Rhule when the name first popped up. I had to do a lot of research to get comfortable with this as a hire. The more I've done, the more excited I've gotten. Like I said, though, Sonny Dykes had a shit record before he went to TCU. And today, TCU is playing a game that will potentially vault them into a Big 12 championship. Well, no, a playoff bid, because this will put them in the playoff championship, and one more win will put them in the playoff. So, yeah, I'm not too worried about the record, just going to be honest. Justice, thanks for the 5. Rhule hasn't beaten any big-name teams at Baylor, but Rhule is all about physicality, and that's how you beat Big Ten teams. He is the perfect match for the Big Ten. He wanted to be a Big Ten coach. I think he probably ideally would have wanted to be the Penn State coach, since that's where he's from. That's where he played, right? Nebraska is a fantastic fit for him. He's 49 years old, which means when he was in his 20s, Nebraska was a powerhouse. He grew up probably idolizing Tom Osborne and understanding how great of a program Nebraska was. They obviously played in the Big 12 and he played in the Big 10, but it didn't matter. He actually, I think, is the same age as Scott Frost. He probably played in the same years, around that time. So he understands what Nebraska is, what it should look like, what it's meant to be, all right? Again, this hire, we talked about this yesterday. This hire doesn't need to be the hire that gets us to a national championship. This hire needs to bring us back to being relevant. This hire needs to get us out of the gutter. This hire needs to get us out of being disrespected repeatedly and spit on by teams like Illinois, Northwestern, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and teams who have no business being on the same field as Nebraska. I don't desire a national championship right now. I desire being respectable. I desire doing the basic things right. I desire having an offensive line who doesn't get steamrolled. I desire being able to run the football for 4 yards a carry. What do you want? Ask yourself that. As a fan, do you need a national championship tomorrow? Most of you will say no. Almost everyone I talk to and every comment I read says, I just want Nebraska to be good at the basic things, and we can build from there. What makes you so sure that Matt Rhule can't get us back to doing the basic things right? Honestly, Matt Rhule, in his second year at Temple, he had 2 years at Temple, I think, out of the 4. Was it 4 years? Whatever it was, irrelevant. He had 2 seasons at Temple where he won 10 games both years. He had 1 season at Baylor where he won 11 games. If he did it at Temple and at Baylor, who are bottom tier schools, they are the worst school, not the worst, but they are bottom feeder schools in their conferences, all right? If he was able to take bottom feeder schools, who are the equivalent of Maryland in the Big 10 and Illinois in the Big 10, and then, or Minnesota in the Big 10, probably better comparison than Illinois. If he was able to take those 2 schools and turn them into 10-win, 11-win teams, why can't he do that here? Tell me. Give me a valid reason, honestly. I'm getting through chat, guys. That's a funny one. he was the golden boy. He was getting back to the dream of the 90s. To be fair, Scott Frost was a hot name, and Scott Frost was getting looked at by every school in the country. So he was the right choice at the time. We had to hire Scott Frost. Let's see. Are we still going to be able to have a good passing game without Palmer? Come on, man. Of course. We got the transfer portal. We've got good receivers coming back. Marcus Washington should be here next year. I'm not worried about the passing game losing Trey Palmer. We're going to get new receivers. Trey Palmer, no disrespect to him at all. He was a nobody before he got to Nebraska. He was a 4-star flameout who didn't get the opportunities over at LSU. And he came to Nebraska and reminded people who the hell he is. And he showed that he's one of the best receivers in the country. He showed why he was a 4-star receiver coming out of high school. He had an incredible year. But how many other receivers do you think are out there like that, sitting in the portal waiting for their chance? A lot of them. I'm happy for Trey. He gets to go and take his shot now. So, yeah, it sucks for Nebraska losing players like this. But at the same time, he came in and he left the place better than he found it. Right? He left it so that the next receiver is going to see Nebraska as a place where they can come in and compete. You've got back-to-back Samori Toure and Trey Palmer now, who were only here for one season and dipped out. Who's next? Because I promise you there's someone out there who can come in here and do the same, maybe not the same thing, but do something that's positive and on a similar level to help us win games. Blue the Boss Boston. He says he's a mediocre hire. Blue the Boss, who wouldn't be a mediocre hire? Tell me who would it be a splash hire for you? Who would you have liked? I'm curious. I'll always talk about the playoff games. I'll talk about all the content, or I'll talk about all the college football bowl games and everything else in live streams going forward. I promise you. I'll be here all December, so we can talk about everything. I follow college football, all of it, not just Nebraska. Nate the Train. Rhule had a quote about really liking Scott Frost, which gave me pause. Something about believing in the culture he probably built. Not sure how to feel about that. He probably said this without being educated. He wasn't as knowledgeable when he said it, right? If he does the research and understands it, then he might have a better idea. But a lot of coaches will say these things to be positive or nice, right? And they might not actually mean it or might not actually have done the research. They're just trying to say something to, whatever their interviewee is asking them. So I wouldn't read too much into that. He probably didn't look at it and say, oh, I love that Scott Frost was late and didn't hold players accountable and all the BS, right? Because I do believe he's the opposite coach to Scott Frost. So a lot of coaches will say things like this to be nice. Don't get too hung up on that. I wouldn't worry about it. Thank you for the $5, Blue the Boss. Mediocre at best hire. We chose potential over proven names. I would argue that we didn't choose potential here. This actually would be choosing a proven name. Choosing potential would have been choosing Deion Sanders, right? Choosing potential would have been choosing Lance Leipold. Proven name would be this guy, though. So this guy has proven it at 2 different schools. I don't know what more you can ask for, to be honest. Does Trev fire Hoiberg next? I mean, we'll see how this season goes, right? Let's see here. Brian says we haven't been relevant since Pelini was a coach and I was in college. What's crazy is Nebraska's been relevant the entire time. Nebraska is forever relevant. Do not forget that ever. Nebraska hasn't been nationally relevant as a football team, but Nebraska's football program will always be relevant. It will always be a talking point. People will always talk about it. It's very interesting. It's a polarizing place, and it forever will be, which is fantastic, as long as we can win a little bit more. But yeah, Nebraska needs to get back to the basics, needs to get back to winning 7 football games just so we're relevant in the Big Ten West race, right? There's no reason we shouldn't have won the Big Ten West this year. We very well could have, and this was one of the worst teams we've had in, 6 years. Crazy. Good passing it without Palmer, fullback. Let's see here. Bill, you're on the same page as me. I like that. I always see Bill positive in the comments. Bill knows what he's talking about, guys. Go read his comments. He's a smart guy. Matthew, thank you for the $5. 8 years, no big deal. If the initial contract was 5 years, after 3 years, it would still have 5 years on it. Or we'd get negative recruited like crazy. 8-3, also -5. Yeah, so that's the thing. This is kind of a standard contract, right? And it does help recruiting to know that there's stability at this program. So I wouldn't worry too much about the 8-year contract. This is very standard and should be expected at a lot of big schools like this. The truth says Matt Rhule is a classy guy. He just didn't want to trash Scott Frost. Exactly, because these coaching circles run small, so it 100% makes sense. Maybe Rhule and Scott Frost were drinking buddies. I'm going to have to guess and say that Matt Rhule isn't a big drinker. He seems entirely focused. He seems like a family guy. He actually fits the Nebraska culture perfectly. Family man, religious dude. He is super focused on having integrity and being the right coach for his players, being a good role model and making sure he grows men, not just football players. So, yeah, man, he fits exactly what Trev Alberts would want. And that's the reason he was the favorite to get this job. That was the reason his odds were plus 150 when he first got fired to be the next head coach in Nebraska. It was expected. The guy's been hot. The guy's been a positive leader in his community. The guy's been a winner. I mean, everything he's done in his life has resulted in W's, wins. Keep that in mind. Corey says, thoughts of Colorado versus Nebraska next year and adding a trophy for the next several years if they hire Deion. So the trophy is a cool idea. It wouldn't happen because they don't play it often enough. They don't ever play, actually. The only reason they've been playing these last couple of years is because they had a couple of those non-conference slates and they plugged each other in. I'm not sure how that's going to be going forward, how many non-conference spots Nebraska's going to have because the Big Ten is going to shift their scheduling. But trophy would be cool, but it's not going to happen. I'm really excited for that game next year. Added to that, Deion Sanders is a front runner for Colorado. It sounds like they offered him the job. I would not be surprised to see Deion take that job. I mean, it would get him in the Power 5. It would get him into the Pac-12. He would instantly, if he was able to get them to 8 wins, instantly be up for another huge job the year after, right? I'd be afraid of Nebraska at Colorado next year. I would, because he's going to be able to do really well in recruiting and in the transfer portal. And exactly what I thought would happen with Nebraska would be happening for Colorado. They would instantly become a 10 times better football team. So I would be worried, it would be dangerous, and I would really hope Matt Rhule was ready to go out and silence the haters who wish that we would have gotten Deion Sanders over Matt Rhule. But that isn't official yet. We don't know what's going to happen with Deion or Colorado. So just something to watch. Also, could you imagine Deion poaching Mickey at Colorado and saying, I'll make you whatever, I'll make you the highest paid wide receivers coach over Nebraska? That would piss a lot of people off. But we won't talk about that. I'm just messing with you. I'm just giving you some ideas. Let's see here. We're talking about Matt Rhule here. Zach says he has no wins in the Big Ten, struggles to beat top 25 teams. Don't understand why we're trying to hype up a 500 coach. This is a Mike Riley hire. We're going to see it blow up in our face in 2 years. It's just not true. There are a lot of Mike Riley hires. And I would honestly, if I can promise you this, if you know me and you've watched me, you know I'm a straight shooter. If I didn't like this hire, I would come down with my fist and cry about it, scream about it, and tell you why it was going to fail. And I would sit here and make content against it. And I would have no problem. I would get my views up. I would make more money because of it, because I'd probably be the only Nebraska channel who would be complaining about it. And I'd be incentivized to do that. I'm sitting here telling you that this is not a Mike Riley hire. I've done a ton of research on him. I've done a ton of research on Mike Riley. There are a lot of coaches who would be in that same boat, and he is not one of them. This whole narrative needs to be shifted. Struggles to beat top 25 teams when he coaches at a shit school. He was at Temple, who was the bottom of the American Conference, who had just shifted into the American Conference, I think in his first year as head coach. The American has teams like Memphis, Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, SMU, good football teams. Temple is not one of them, and he still beat some of those top 25 teams, and he beat Penn State when he was at Temple. Don't just gloss over that and make that sound like it doesn't matter. At Baylor, they were not meant to be a dominant program, okay? Baylor, when I grew up, was a shit show. Baylor was Kansas of today, okay? I remember watching Baylor and knowing that that would always be a Nebraska win, okay? Baylor got relevant under Art Briles. When he left, Baylor goes back to being just Baylor, okay? Let's say the number 7 or the 8th or ninth team in the Big 12. He rebuilt it back his way from 1 win to 7 wins to 11 wins in 3 years. And he didn't beat OU when he got the shot. But he didn't play any other top 25 teams. I understand you want to see a coach who's had more success against top 25s. But we're getting something that I think is a long-term positive, which is a guy who can build the culture, build the program up over time, and with that same build comes more blocks. And with those blocks, some of those blocks will be top 25 wins, okay? Think of it that way. Trying to explain this in real world terms to make it make sense, to get you inside my brain and how I think. Antonio, thank you for the 10. People saying we haven't been relevant since Pelini is funny, since we're ranked 8 at one point with Mike Riley. That is true. Mike Riley did it with Bo Pelini's team. Craziness. Let's see here. Thank you for the 5. Or for the 10. Thank you for the 10. Bladen, thank you for the 5. If you got a question, I'm going to find it in here. There it is. How would the passing game this season... How would the passing game be this season if we had DeColdis Crawford? DeColdis is young. He's a freshman, so I don't think it would have made that much of a difference. I don't think he was going to get to play very much as it was. I think DeColdis is a guy who you got to develop, and maybe he gets to see the field a little bit next year, but more likely the year after. So we'll see. He was a 3-star recruit out of high school. He wasn't expected to come in and be an instant impact player, but I think because people saw him coming with Mickey Joseph, they got really excited for him. They hyped him up and thought, oh, he's going to be an instant impact guy. I don't see that to be true. I think he's a development project, and maybe we get to see him a little bit next year, but I'm looking the next year after that to see him break out. That's just my opinion on it. Who knows? Let's see. Matt Rhule's nothing like Mike Riley. Woodgie says, very proud of Michigan today, even though I predicted Ohio State to win. I took Michigan +8. My friend Josh took Michigan, money line. He bet $250 to win $650. I think 10 times. So he ended up winning $6,500 on the money line, and then he ended up winning another, I think, $6,500 on the straight. So Josh on Brothrow, because you guys know Brothrow, our channel sponsor, if you want to sign up and get into our Brothrow group, it's brothrow.com/GBR. You can click the link in the description. You can bet on sports there. It's super easy. It's great. #1 site I use for placing bets. But anyway, Josh had to get the guy who he beat to wire transfer him the funds because it was too much money. It was like $7,000 from one guy. It was crazy. Anyway, congrats Michigan. Congrats all our Michigan fans. I think we have more Michigan subscribers, or my Michigan friends, not fans, sorry. We've got more Michigan subscribers on this channel than we do Ohio State subscribers on this channel. So personally, because of all of the Michigan subscribers, I was polling for Michigan today. And Jose says Auburn just hired a new coach. It's not Lane Kiffin. I didn't see if Auburn announced yet, but it does sound like Auburn got whiffed on Kiffin, and they're going to have to settle for Hugh Freeze. I wouldn't say settle. He's a good coach, but they did get blown out today by, I think, New Mexico State by like 40 points. Clearly, he's checked out and was signing his papers to go over to Auburn. Hugh Freeze, I believe, is the former Ole Miss coach back from early 2010 era. I don't know. Don't quote me. This is all just off the top of my head. But yeah, Auburn. I'm not sure how fans are going to feel about Hugh Freeze. Good football coach, great hire. Not too sure I would call him that. Similar to Matt Rhule? Maybe. I think Matt Rhule might have a little bit more upside though. So interesting. We'll see. It's an interesting coaching cycle. I don't know what to make of it. Grow Big Red says, I see what you're saying. All his losses came in the first 2 years while he was building. Yep. But we need to win now. We've already seen and paid for enough losing. He has never coached during the NIL era. He has never coached during the portal era. He has never had a recruiter like Mickey Joseph on his staff. If he can retain Mickey and if they can hit the portal hard, he could probably win a lot quicker than I'm expecting. I'm hoping for 6 wins next year. But if he gets the right portal class and if he gets some linemen, this could easily be a 7-8 win team. Nebraska plays really weak teams. You watched yesterday. You watched Minnesota. Nebraska could have beaten any team they've played outside of Michigan this year. and Oklahoma. They got worked by Oklahoma. But after Mickey came in, after the OU game, they could have beaten any team they played if they would have had full health, if they would have had more depth, if they would have had better culture. I mean, there were all these little issues. If those can get fixed in one season, I would expect them to be able to win rather quickly. Dom says, oh my God, Dion and MJ on the same staff. It would beyond piss me off with Nebraska. Rhule's a cool coach, no doubt, but it's time to be elite or just another, hate to say it, but respectable Iowa and Wisconsin. I get it. I don't think Dion or MJ are going to lead an elite team anytime soon as head coaches. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. But I do think I don't know, man. It would be painful to see them together. It would be painful to see them together and think, oh, what could have been here? But that's not what this is. Reality is we've got Matt Rhule, and he's going to build something special. So thanks for the comment, Dom. I know you were a big Mickey Joseph supporter, and you were sad that he didn't get the job. But he just didn't have enough on the resume, unfortunately. Richard, thank you for the 20. If Matt doesn't work out, can we all look at a different point of view that the fault is the boosters maybe? Why would it be the boosters' fault? At this point, if Rhule didn't work out, you would have to blame Trev Alberts because I think this was a Trev Alberts move. Do you think the boosters were all gung-ho for him? I don't know. Who knows? No clue. Trenton says he won't get excited about the hire because there have been too many disappointments in the past. I get it. I will challenge you, though. If we get a hire that's a big name at defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator, I would challenge you to get excited because I think you might feel like you can't and you want to hold back. But if we got the right big name, just try it a little bit. Try a little bit of joy in your heart. See what it feels like because I'm telling you, there's reason to be positive if the staff is built out the right way. They can flip this thing fast. I promise you. I fully believe that. And this doubles down to what I said. Grow Big Red says, till we hear his staffing rundown, I'm still on the fence. So right now, it's end of November. I'm guessing the staff doesn't get entirely filled out until January. Jeez, it's a long time, right? A full month and 4 days or something like that. My guess is we hear Monday that he's the new coach. We'll find out how much money he's getting by Monday. And then after that, we'll start to see key pieces fill in. Maybe in that next week, he interviews Mickey Joseph and Bill Bush, and maybe Brian Applewhite sees who he wants to keep on the staff and then cuts a few loose. Then we'll start to hit recruiting really hard. We'll start to see who some of these guys are going to sign from the recruiting class are. It already looks like a lot of the Nebraska kids are going to try and stay with this. They're going to try and give Rhule a chance. So we'll see how that goes. And then the transfer portal comes in, and then that's when things are going to get crazy. From now, realistically, this weekend, what is it? Monday, I guess. The transfer portal is going to open up, and there's a bunch of players who are going to hit it hard. And then we're going to start to see who these coaches need to go after. And then we'll see if Casey Thompson's coming back, and we're going to start to understand how this team will look next year. So December is going to be a very exciting month. January as well. It's really these next 2 months are building towards 2023. So there's a lot to find out. Husker Nation says, does Rhule understand NIL? Thank you for the 5. I'm 1,000% sure he understands NIL. Does he have experience with it? No. Does he need experience with it? No. He's going to come into Nebraska for this next month and learn all about it. So he's going to be educated and enlightened. He's going to build a staff around him who does understand it, and they're going to try and figure out how to go and win with it quickly, right? I'm not too concerned about that or the transfer portal stuff. He understands that to win in today's climate, you have to be good at both. And Nebraska just so happens to have the resources to be able to compete in both those areas. Noah, thank you for the 5. With the situation Rhule is walking into with NIL and being at a better school than Baylor and Temple, he's a great fit. Record prediction 6-6 next year. I personally am going to probably have to go with 6-6 just because our schedule is so meh. We can win 6 games at any given point, no matter who the head coach is, because we always have enough talent to beat any of these teams who just are average, just like we saw yesterday. So 6-6 is a fair prediction. I do think there's a chance for 7, maybe even 8 wins. Chance. Slim chance. but I would say 6 is where I'd feel good. But I would not be surprised if Nebraska only won 5 next year. I do think we're going to win more next year than we won this year. Just by default, that we don't have a guy who's ruining our program, I think we're going to win more than we did this year. 4 wins. It was hard to win 4 games this year. It was hard to lose to Wisconsin. It was hard to lose to Minnesota. I mean, those were almost free wins where we couldn't ask for an easier way to get a win, right? That would have put us at 6 wins. So, and that was without our quarterback and without anybody else developed. It's rough, man. Nebraska had 6 on the schedule this year easily. So, I think 6 is fair to assume. But in Rhule's past, we have seen him with much less than 6. We've seen him start off with 1 or 2 wins. So who knows how it'll be. Transfer portal changes it, though. Dreamin' Digital says the negativity in here is ridiculous. Fans think they know everything. Yeah, I try to be understanding, right? Because I get where they're coming from. We all had hope. We all believed that you got to get this big name, and this big name's going to come and turn things around right away. But if you watched college football this year, you'll learn that it takes the right coach. It doesn't take the big name. It takes the guy who fits. It takes the Josh Heupel. It takes the Sonny Dykes. It takes the Dan Lanning. And we got one. Tell me how he isn't one of those 3. Explain, because no one can. Rhule's records suck. Come on. I mean, you guys can say everything you want. Not a builder. He is a builder. He went from 1 win to 2 wins, or 4 wins, to 7 wins, to 11 wins, repeatedly. He's done it multiple times. Facts don't care about your feelings. Don't ever forget that quote, because a lot of people will be emotional. A lot of people will always try and discount facts, ignore facts. But they're right in front of your damn eyes. Go do the research yourself. I did. I'm doing it still. I'm working on a video, like I told you, that I'm going to release later today. It's going to have plenty of facts in it. And there will be plenty of emotional, ignorant comments. I'll tell you a comment I saw today on Twitter. It was about Nebraska. Who was this guy who tweeted it? It was about Nebraska not being a good enough job. So this person, a Nebraska fan, said, "No thank you," regarding Matt Rhule. He said Dave Aranda or Kyle Whittingham. Those are the 2 coaches he would prefer. And this guy, Barrett Sally, or whatever his name is, who is a reporter for CBS Sports, or maybe he's a writer. Whatever he is, he's verified. He's got 100,000 followers. He's also a joke. He said Dave Aranda and Kyle Whittingham are way, way, way too good for Nebraska. This is an emotional reaction. This is an emotional take. This is a clown take, a peasant take, a casual fan take, a you should be unverified as a sports reporter take because you don't know what the fuck you are talking about. You are a joke as a national media person, and you're telling me that Nebraska is not good enough for Kyle Whittingham or Dave Aranda? Again, like I said, facts don't care about your feelings. That's a prime example. Your feelings are that Nebraska sucks recently. Nebraska hasn't won many games, so Nebraska can't get Kyle Whittingham or Dave Aranda or Matt Rhule or any of these other good coaches who are out here. The fact is Nebraska brings more to the table than whatever school you want to win. The fact is Nebraska has a better history, a better tradition, a better fan base, more money, more resources, more potential, a better conference, and better everything else than most of these schools out here. They check the boxes for any big name coach. And the fact that Trev Alberts decided to go with a coach who checked his boxes and who could rebuild this program the way he wants it rebuilt, and the fact that he was able to get that coach over other suitors like Auburn, who are other top 15 programs in the country with a massive NIL fund, a massive fan base, a ton of support. The fact that he was able to get all of that proves this. Again, I'll say it one more time. Facts don't care about your feelings. It's a joke. People don't know what they're talking about. They get emotional and they say these stupid things. So Dreamin' Digital, I know, a lot of people are going to be negative. A lot of people think they know everything. And they like to shout and scream. What happens is people, they will talk really loud and they will fucking berate you and fire off all this misinformation and then hope that you listen to it. No matter how loud they get, no matter how many times they type their feelings, the facts are still right in front of their face, and they will always ignore them. There are a lot of facts about Matt Rhule that you guys need to see. Miguel, thank you for the $5. Question for you, bro. What would your expectations be in terms of wins per each season and then eventually a bowl game? So it's really hard to determine a long-term plan for him, right? We don't even know who his coordinators are. Right now, I would say I would hope Nebraska can get to 5 wins next year. That'd be my goal, a target, right? We say we can get to 5. That would be better than what we've seen these last 2 years. It'd be a tiny bit of a, call it a letdown, because I think a lot of people would hope for 6. But my goal would say 5. It could be a little bit of a letdown, but it's, the first building block in this foundation. Then year 2, I would hope we can get to a bowl game and win a bowl game. I think that would be a seriously good goal in year 2 of a coach like this, who's in his first year in the Big Ten and all that. In year 3, based on his past, I would be comfortable, based on what we've seen him do before, in saying 9 wins and a bowl game that we could win, potentially being at 9-4 with a chance to, or 9-3 with a chance to win the bowl game. So getting us to 10. That's where I would say, just now, based on who he is as a coach. But I don't know. It's going to be determined based on these assistant coaches. Huskerhead says, too much uneducated emotional comments here. Dewey says he's a 500 coach. That's a fact. Yeah, there's a lot of 500 coaches. But every coach, what do you think? How do you think this works? Every coach has to start somewhere. They all have to start, and this is before NIL. This is before transfer portal, okay? Every coach has to start somewhere. Most coaches, even our coach who we had before, named Scott Frost, they start with a weak record. Scott Frost, I think, started with 6 wins in his first year over at UCF, okay? And that was a powerhouse program in that conference, by the way, and in his division. Anyway, starts with 500, or starts with negative. Then he gets up to 10 wins, 11 wins. And now it balances out to be he's a 500 coach over his entire career at that school. Well, he was only at these schools for 3, maybe 4 years. So what do you expect? He had dominant seasons and he had terrible seasons. It wasn't that he had, okay, this is what you're trying to do. This is what you're trying to do. You're manipulating facts, okay? What didn't happen was Matt Rhule had 5-5, 5-5, 5-5, 5-5. That's not what happened, but that's what you're trying to make it seem like happened. Or you're trying to make it seem like he went 2-7, and then I don't know. I'm not going to fire all these numbers off the top of my head, but the point is he had a losing record, winning record, terrible losing record, decent winning record. That's what you're trying to make it sound like. That's not what happened. He was a 500 coach. That's a fact. But he was only 500 if you're counting the building years. Go to the top after he built his program. And what would have happened if he stayed at Baylor? And what would have happened if he stayed at Temple? The trajectory was like this. You think the trajectory was going to go like this and drop off after? No, sir. He had it going upward for a reason. NFL teams knew that. Auburn knew that. Nebraska knows that. And that's why they said, this guy has multiple times shown that his trajectory as a builder is like this. So we're buying into this. We're not buying into he's 500 as a coach. That's a fact. You're manipulating the fact. I don't appreciate that. Dewey, I appreciate you, but I don't appreciate manipulated facts. Thanks for being a member, and thanks for your comment, because it gives us a good thing to talk about and a good thing for me to challenge. Zero says, Connor, you're wrong. I love it when people prove me wrong, so tell me. Nebraska was in some serious trouble and needed some time. Mickey deserved that chance. Okay. Mickey deserved the chance to be the interim head coach. I agree with you. Mickey did not deserve to be the head coach. It's not like he did enough to earn that job. He deserved, in my opinion, he deserved an interview. He didn't get one for whatever reason. Unfortunately, because of his resume and because of what he has not done before he got to Nebraska, he wasn't considered. I don't know how we can justify, 9 games? 9 games leading this team, how we can justify that as saying this guy needs a 5-year, $7 million a year deal to be the next head coach at Nebraska, even though he's proven nothing to us. He's a huge risk. I mean, what am I wrong about? Is he not a huge risk? Tim says you can't flip a line that quickly. We got to give the guy a minute. That's true. It's going to take some time to flip the line. It's going to take some time. I honestly think that maybe 2 years until we get back to being able to win, at a high level, because the line is what it'll take to win 8 games or more. So, yep, I feel ya. I feel ya. He also seems to build then leave. So this is another concern that people have, and I understand this is a concern. It makes sense. He was at Temple for 3 or 4 years, dipped out. Then he went back to Temple after I think he was the defensive line coach for the New York Giants. Then he was at Temple as the head coach after that. Then after Temple, he dipped out, which made sense. It's justified. He dipped out for a better job at Baylor, more money. Then he's at Baylor for 3 years. Baylor is not Nebraska. Baylor is not Bama. It's not Ohio State. It's not a tier 1. It's not even a tier 2 school. Let's be fair and let's be clear in what that job is. He left Baylor for the NFL at the peak in his career. He left Baylor when he had basically gotten them as high as he was going to get them. 11-2, what are you going to expect? A national championship? No. So he said, here's the deal. The iron's hot. The NFL teams are calling me like crazy. I'm 46 years old at the time. I've got one chance in my life because I may never be this hot again. I might be 9 wins next year, 8 wins the next year, 10 wins after that, but I'll never be this hot. I can go and get a massive contract. You guys saw what his buyout was. I can go and get life-changing money one time. Here's my chance. First, he said, no, I'm not going to leave Baylor. Then he thought about it more. He said, I can't turn it down. I got to take my one chance in the NFL. He did it. He failed. He learned his lesson. He's not going back to the NFL anytime soon. I can promise you that. He's not a program hopper. He's not a guy who's just trying to look for a quick come up and then leave and get bored and dip out. Okay, I don't think that's him. I do think there would be potential in him building Nebraska up a bit and then saying, oh, well, Penn State's calling and that's my dream job and he could potentially leave for that. So I understand. But even if he left after 3 years, I don't think he leaves before that, by the way. Even if he left after 3 years, at least he got us back to being decent. At least he got us back to not being a gutter team. At least we can beat Illinois and Purdue, right? That's what I truly believe. And then Nebraska will have a chance to go and get another hire. How much better do you think and how much more attractive do you think the Nebraska job is if we're not a gutter team? If we're not a team who wins 3 and 4 games consistently? If we're not coming in with shit culture? The next coach might be like, damn, Matt Rhule fixed this thing. Now I can take it to the next level. I can pick up where things left off and keep this thing going. That's how I feel about Matt Rhule. Do I care if he stays more than 3 years? No. I just care that he gets us back while he is here. Get us back to being respectable, like I said in the beginning of this video. And if you don't agree, tell me why. Bang, bang. Chat. Miguel, you did this one. Let me see. Okay. Matthew, thank you for the 5. Anyone saying Baylor wasn't a rebuild doesn't know what they're talking about. They had 45 scholarship players and huge criminal morality scandal. Okay, so I am going to argue this. Thank you for the 5, Matthew. I don't believe Baylor was a rebuild. I believe that Baylor was a build. Baylor had a scandal, but I don't think that scandal was as horrible as people made it seem. They made it seem like it was the SMU death penalty, okay? It wasn't. They won 7 games and a bowl game the year that they lost their coach. They lost 45 scholarship players, but they returned 13 starters out of 22 on that next roster. They returned, I think, 60% of their 3 deep or 50% of their 3 deep or something. So I do understand that they had a morality issue and a criminal scandal, but it wasn't the death penalty like SMU. It wasn't as big of a dumpster fire as Nebraska. There were some issues that had to get sorted out, but they didn't have to rebuild what Kansas was. They didn't have to rebuild what Nebraska is. This will be his first time taking over a true rebuild where the program is at the lowest it's ever been. Baylor was at a low point, but I would argue that Nebraska's at a much worse point than Baylor was back in 2017. He did build that team, though, because every year, what was the trajectory? Face the facts. It was like this. Every year went up a little bit more, and the slope would have continued to increase. We even saw last year with Dave Aranda at Baylor. He won 12 games. Well, he wouldn't have won 12 games if the foundation wasn't laid by Matt Rhule just 2 years before, right? Just something to keep in mind. Let me see here. Flour Tortilla, thank you for the 5, and thank you for being a member. I'm just pumped we ended the regular season on a high, beat Iowa, and found our new leader. Excited for what we get and who we recruit. Where we go and who we recruit. Yeah, okay, so I think this is the mentality that most Nebraska fans have, right? Most Nebraska fans are just happy that we won against Iowa and that we're going to go out and rebuild the program and rebuild this team. And there's going to be a lot that happens over this next month. So I totally understand if you're still critiquing things. I totally understand if you still got a lot of questions. But at the very least, as a friend, because I do look at all of you as my friends, right? If you met me in person, I treat you like you're my friends because you are. You're the people I talk to every day, okay? On social media, on here, whatever. And you're the people who support me the most, so a lot of love here. Anyway, as a friend, I would encourage you to try and be as positive and as hopeful as possible. There's reason to have hope right now. Now, you might not have as much hope as the next guy. You might not have as much hope or as much belief in this future that I do, and that's okay. But just try to be hopeful and try to be happy as much as you can. Look at it and say, okay, these last 5 years were shit. They were broken, they didn't work out, and it was unfortunate. There was a lot to be sad about. There wasn't a reason to have hope, and there wasn't a reason to believe anything would change. But right now, this is a new beginning. This is a fresh start. And there's a reason to believe that at the very least, they can do a little bit better than this last staff. So I truly 1,000,000% believe that. Like, if I don't 1,000,000% believe that he can get this program back to being a 10-win program, I do at the very least believe he can get him back to being a 7-win program, okay? So at the very least, be happy about that. Try and appreciate that Trev Alberts made a move that is going to better this program. It's going to better your life. It's going to better your mental health and better our videos as well, better our content. So that's all I can say as a friend, man. That's a message to everybody on here, to every Nebraska fan, to every college football fan, because college football fans don't want me to talk about a sad Nebraska team. They want me to talk about a positive Nebraska team, you know? It's boring if I'm talking about negativity all the time. It's just not my thing. I'm better as a positive person, and you guys have seen that. You guys like when I yell and scream and get happy, so you know the vibes. Max, thank you for the 5. Not quite sure how I feel about Rhule yet, but very excited to see if we can keep Mickey at wide receivers coach and see how we build from there. This is going to be so interesting. I'm not 100% sold on the idea that Mickey comes back next year. I don't know what his relationship's going to be with Rhule, and I don't know if he's going to like that style. There's just so many question marks. There's certain coaches I would have felt like Mickey would have said, yes, I'll stay here with him. But yeah, what's that relationship going to be? And would it be detrimental to this team if we lost Mickey Joseph? I think it would be a huge hit. I think Mickey Joseph is unquestionably one of the top 3 wide receivers coaches in the country. So if you lose, and recruiting, geez, that guy brings so much to the table. And understanding the landscape of Nebraska, man, it would hurt my heart a lot if Mickey wasn't here next year. I really hope he's back. Yes, I don't even want to think about it. I want to be hopeful and think Mickey's back next year. He's going to have an interview this week with Matt Rhule and Trev Alberts. They're going to have a conversation, and everything's going to be smooth, good transition. He's going to make almost $1 million a year, and he's going to be happy. And then we'll figure it out from there. Ty, thank you for the 5, and GBR, brother. See you in the chat all the time, so thanks for being back. Huskerhead, thank you for the 5. You're back too. Thank you. GBR. I'm reading through the comments right now. Trenton says Rhule is good at developing players, so that's a plus. Yeah, one of his recruiting strategies, and again, I'm going to talk about this in my real video that I make today. The reason it's taken me so long to make this video, by the way, is because there are so many good college football games on today. I mean, it's rivalry weekend. It's the last regular season weekend of the game, and please, don't blame me for it. I just enjoy college football as a whole, so I've got to try and enjoy these games while I can, because I only get 13 regular season weeks of the year. And outside of that, I'm lonely and depressed in my room. I literally, during the offseason, I lay in bed. I don't get out of bed. I lay there for hours a day. I have nothing to do, nothing to talk about, just waiting for anything positive to come out about college football news. So let me enjoy it while I can, and I'll make the video and get it up as soon as possible. But it probably won't be until tonight because, yeah, I'm just soaking it all in. And I have a lot of bets today. A lot. Today's a good day. Let's see here. Rhule good enough for that. Makes a class. Jose says we need Applewhite so bad, but I fear that option because All the Applewhite's recruits have taken out Nebraska in their Twitter profiles. Yeah, I think a lot of the recruits took out Applewhite from his Twitter profile, and I talked to a recruit who's an Applewhite recruit. I think Applewhite was selling them on Mickey Joseph being the next head coach and that culture. So a lot of those recruits wanted to go play for Mickey Joseph. And so now that Mickey Joseph isn't the head coach, they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to Nebraska. Because just like Trey Palmer, he was tied to their future at Nebraska. And I don't think we need to chase players. It's all good. If Matt Rhule wants to go and hire Applewhite, or if he wants to go and hire Mickey Joseph and then they can re-recruit some of those players, fantastic. If they can't, there will be plenty of players out there who want to come play for Matt Rhule. So I'm not too concerned about it. But yeah, I'm sure a lot of them did take it out because a lot of players were expecting or hoping that Mickey Joseph would get hired as head coach. Matthew, you asked who I had winning the East. I think I had Ohio State. I didn't have Michigan. I think I picked Michigan to win 9 games this year and lose 3. Brian, thank you for the 20. Saw Baylor fans wishing Rhule would have went back to them, but they're happy that he's with Nebraska. I'm on board with Rhule, GBR. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of Baylor fans would have liked to have him back. He was awesome. The players loved him. He sent some guys to the pros. He did good things at Baylor. He built them. So, yeah, I don't think this is a bad hire. I think there's a lot of national media who's talked positively about Rhule. So, I'm super confident. That's all I got to say about it. I'm excited for it. Jamie says, who are the clowns asking if Whipple is staying? Jamie, it might be kids. It might be people who are more casual watchers and don't understand it as much. Let's not be mean to everybody. Let's be nice. So here's the deal for everybody asking about Whipple and every other coach. There is only realistically probably two coaches on this staff who will get retained at most. Matt Rhule is going to interview Bill Busch. He's going to interview Mickey Joseph. And I'm going to guess he's going to interview Applewhite. Maybe he hires one of them. Tiny chances he hires 2 of them. Almost 0 chance he hires all 3. So Mark Whipple's on that list. Mark Whipple's gone. I'm going to guess that Mark Whipple retires. Maybe he coaches next year at a place that's not as stressful, or I don't know what he does. He's an older guy. He's got some health issues. I would guess he retires. He won't be back at Nebraska next year. 1,000,000% promise you that. I will say I did appreciate Mark Whipple coming here this year. I thought it was fun to watch him pass the ball since we had no running game, and I appreciated the fact that he knew we didn't have a running game because of our offensive line, and he still figured out ways to throw it all the time and try to incorporate the run a little bit, and that's why we got to see some good runs from Anthony Grant and even Ramir Johnson yesterday. So thank you, Mark Whipple, for your time, and it was fun for the year it lasted, but he will not be back. Randall says, I don't know why people complain about Whipple. He was very good at scheming and X's and O's. Give him personnel with 2 to 3 years to learn a system, and we would have the best offense in the West. I agree with this. Whipple's legit as a passing game guy, and it's really hard when you've got to build from zero, and he was building from zero. And in his first year, he still had a receiver who went for 1,000 yards. So, and he was playing with backup quarterbacks for 3 games. I mean, Whipple did more with less. Let's be real. Steven says they usually keep 1 or 2 assistants for a transition, in which case I think it would be Bill Busch and Mickey Joseph in that transition. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting. I really hope they get to keep 2 of them, but who knows? I don't know who Steve's talking to. Maybe he's talking to me. I'm the same dude that said Scott Frost was a good pick. Scott Frost was a great pick. Scott Frost not only was a good pick, he was a monumental hire, and we won that over a lot of other schools. He was the only option for Nebraska at that point, and if we didn't get him, that would have been a huge problem. Hindsight's 2020. If you're an adult, you know that. If you're a little kid, then yeah, I'm sorry for calling you out, but you're probably a 10-year-old, so I'm going to stop this here. I understand. It's hard for 10-year-olds to process that information. Let's see here. Huskerhead said TCU's putting it on Iowa State. Sonny Dykes Jr. is their head coach. TCU is for real. You never know. That's the thing. Sonny Dykes did nothing before TCU, and he's now leading his team to a playoff. Even if they don't get to the playoff, they've exceeded expectations. They were supposed to win 4 or 5 games this year. What the hell happened at TCU? They lost their star running back, Zach Evans, to the transfer portal. They lost their running backs coach and a bunch of other coaches who were pretty good there. They lost O'Shawn Mathis, who was going to be a returning Big 12 all Big 12 pick, okay? Second teamer. And they were able to rebuild instantly. Instantly. Wow. Who would have seen that coming? Josh Heupel, same thing. Who would have seen that coming? Okay, don't get too hung up on Matt Rhule not being a recent winner in college football, that he's been removed. I'm telling you, none of that matters. Nick Saban left college football, came back, and won right away. Just keep that in mind, man. Richard, thank you for the $10. I'm laughing seeing all these Ohio State fans begging for Urban back. Ryan Day is on the hot seat. Ryan Day has gone from, I think he was the offensive coordinator for Ohio State, playoff contender when he was an offensive coordinator, to being the head coach, and this team has regressed. I don't care if you want to say, well, they win 11 games, what are you talking about? That is not the standard, that is not the expectation, and that is not acceptable for Ohio State football. It is embarrassing that they've lost 8-point favorites back-to-back years against Michigan. One time they lost at home. They had a Heisman contender quarterback. They had they had the number one receiver core in the country. They had arguably a top 3 running back in the country. They went and poached Jim Knowles and gave him a massive contract from Oklahoma State when they knew their defense needed a huge upgrade last year after failing miserably in that Michigan game. And they still failed miserably. I'm sorry, Ryan Day is on the hot list. Do not be surprised if he takes an NFL job next year or something, or if he just gets outright fired, because it's unacceptable not to make the playoff in back-to-back years when you are built to be a playoff team. And don't tell me Ohio State's not built to be a playoff team. Ohio State has all the pieces, every single piece at every single position. They've even got freshman linebackers who would be Hall of Famers if they came to Nebraska right now. So, hot seat Ryan. I'm not laughing at the Ohio State fans, by the way. I feel bad for the Ohio State fans. This was, man, call it a failed experiment, I guess. He needs to make some serious changes next year. What changes do you make if you're Ryan Day? Man, something didn't go right. Congrats to Michigan. Woodgie says, why only 2 assistants stay? I don't understand why to reinvent the wheel. So you reinvent the wheel because Nebraska sucks. They're terrible. They won 4 games this year. You flush out the bad energy and you reset. That's why. You go and get a coach in here, like Matt Rhule, who wants to build his system and implement, his ideas. And if you're going to implement his ideas, he needs to get guys who he knows are fully on board with what he believes, who run the scheme he wants to run, and who understand his style. So you go and get all these new coaches in here, or not new, coaches he's familiar with, and you try to win games with them. That's just the nature of the game. That's how it goes. Dreamin' Digital says, do you think Trev Osborne administration talked to Rhule about keeping Mickey? I would have to assume. They all really like Mickey. Yeah. An assumption, yeah. No clue, but I can't confirm anything, but had to. Sonny's their I lost all the they're loading, guys, sorry. Sonny's the conference's Pat Fitzgerald, maximizes what they have. It's very true. Maybe Matt Rhule's the same way. Revenue says, and especially leave out his NFL gig. I'm pretty indifferent on the Rhule hire, but to use his NFL body of experience is goofy. It's only a plus. You can only look at the NFL experience, even if it's losses, as a plus in recruiting, as a plus in experience and knowledge, understanding football. He was able to try some things that didn't work out. So, it's 100% a plus. Pat Skurs says, best thing that ever happened to Harbaugh was Meyer leaving. Fickle is just waiting for that job to open. Yeah, Fickle might have a chance to get that job because he's a defensive mind and they really need their defense to come back. So, it's going to be interesting to watch. College football, man. The best reality show on TV. Let's see here. Husker D says, imagine winning 11 games and being on the hot seat. Connor, you might need to watch some real coaches coach football today. I have been. I've been watching all these games. I've seen some real coaches. I'm going to have to watch Sonny Dykes after this. McFly Guy says, where'd I get the hat? I think I got this at Best of Big Red in Lincoln, like 2 or 3 years ago. Let's see. Pasker says, Michigan surprised me today. They could win it all. I would be utterly shocked if they won it all, but they could potentially give Georgia a better chance or a better shot than they gave them last year. They had almost no chance to win last year against Georgia, and they showed that with a blowout loss. This year, it would be really interesting because they've now had some chances to make some adjustments, and those players have a little bit more hope. And yeah, I'd be interested to watch that game, a little rematch. We'll see. I'm trying to go to the national championship. The national championship game is in LA, which is the stadium's like 30 minutes from my house. So if I can go to the national championship, that would be amazing. It would be kind of a bucket list experience. And if I could watch Michigan, I think that'd be super cool. So we'll see. But I am hoping to go to the national championship this year with my dad. Let's see. Benjamin says, if Ohio State fires Ryan Day, I hope they get cursed like we did for firing Solich. No, I think it's necessary. If you have a coach who can't win the games that matter, you have to fire him. Ohio State should have won a lot more. Should have won some of these games by a lot more points than they did this year. They had some injuries and some issues, and you can't win every game in a blowout. But the expectation at Ohio State is so high that if you're not delivering, you need to go and find a coach who can deliver, right? Ryan Day doesn't deserve to be the head coach if he can't deliver on their expectation. It's like Nebraska with Bo Pelini. He was fired for other reasons. But Nebraska got to a point where they said, we're done. We win 9 games every year. But Connor flies out to these games against Ohio State, against Penn State, against Michigan, and Wisconsin, and watches his defense, his favorite team, get rolled by 45 or 50 points a week. Do I want to watch that? No. So it was time to make a change. Nebraska had to do it with Bo Pelini, and Ohio State's going to have to do it with Ryan Day unless he makes a change. So we'll see. Owen, thank you for the 20. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody who's super chatted, everyone who's bought merch, everybody who's supported the channel as a member and everything, because it goes a long way to help me be able to make more of this content. This is my full-time job during the football season, so yeah. And a lot of people went and supported the merch yesterday, so I had some orders I'm going to send out on Monday. If you want to get merch, I've got hoodies, stickers, everything in my store. It's corncraze.com, and the discount code for 25% off is GBR. So just something to think about if you want to support the channel. Dom says there's an article that says Osborne talked to Rhule. It was cordial and brief, but most of it was about Mickey. Interesting. Osborne selling him on Mickey would be fantastic, and maybe that means that we'll see Mickey Joseph here next year. So maybe that means that Mickey would actually be interested in staying with Matt Rhule, because I'm assuming Mickey and Tom have talked about Mickey, and if Mickey wasn't interested in being a coach on that staff, he probably would have told Tom, I don't know about this one. I might explore my options. So that'd be interesting. Shake says Fickle already had the Ohio State job and did terrible. No, he had the interim job at Ohio State, and he did what you'd expect an interim head coach to do. So yeah, Mickey Joseph did terrible at Nebraska, but what did you expect? Mickey Joseph could end up being a great head coach somewhere else. So yeah, you don't hold that over his head. He didn't have it go his way, but he didn't have a time to build his team. And when you look at what he's done at Cincinnati, Fickle's been fantastic. Think about it that way. XYP says, Rhule's awesome, a great rebuilder, great knowledge of the game of football, great person who fits Nebraska. His personality, loves the culture. Only question is, will he be a good NIL recruiter? That's a huge question, and that's a huge thing I don't know. I have no idea. He's never done it before, so I think it's going to be really important he gets the right staff around him. If anyone wanted to make an argument against Matt Rhule, I'm going to give you free firepower. Are you ready? Matt Rhule doesn't have recent history in college football. So any of these high school kids who are now looking to coaches and they see all these big names and all these flashy schools they can go to, Nebraska is not a school you'd want to go to because they have been garbage these kids' entire lives. Matt Rhule is not a coach who's flashy enough to attract these kids. So that is a place where you could target Matt Rhule and say, I'm not happy about this hire because what's he going to be able to do in recruiting right out the gate? Scott Frost won in recruiting. Why? Because he came off massive success at Oregon as an offensive coordinator. He came off a national championship at UCF. And all of these kids right away said, wow, I was considering UCF, but it wasn't a realistic option because it wasn't a big-time school. But Nebraska, I'm in. With Matt Rhule, some of these kids are going to be like, he failed as an NFL head coach. Why do I want to go play for him? Because they don't think about it that way, right? It'll be interesting. Think of it that way. Flour Tortilla, you got to look at the coordinators he had before. There's a guy named Phil Snow, I think his name is, the defensive coordinator from Baylor. So I'd keep an eye on that. I think he was the defensive coordinator at the Panthers too, who got fired on his staff. So I don't know about offensive coordinator though. No idea. We'll see. People knock Rhule's record against ranked teams at Baylor, but fail to recognize those were top 10 teams, and he took playoff Oklahoma to overtime. That's a fact. It's hard. It's hard when you're in your third year trying to beat a playoff team, and you keep it within 7, I think, or 3. So it wasn't a win, but he had him on an upward trajectory. I think that's how we've got to look at it. Guys, I've been here for an hour and a half now. It's been a great chat. It's been a great stream in general. I'm going to make a video. Right now I'm going to get back to work on it because it's going to take me a couple hours. I'll have it up hopefully late tonight. And if it's not up by late tonight, you'll see it first thing when you wake up in the morning because I'm not going to bed till it's finished. So I've got one more super chat to respond to and then I'm going to get out of here. Public Size Outdoor, thank you for the 5. Somewhere I saw Mickey was going to be involved with the NIL. Not sure what that means, but that's what I saw. If he stays here as a coach, he's going to be involved with NIL to some degree and having to understand, what part that plays in their recruiting because he's the recruiting coordinator. He's the guy who's going to oversee all of it, in my opinion. I don't know what you read, but that's my guess. Richard, thank you for the $5 super chat. Do we have a special teams coordinator with Matt as head coach? We don't have anybody in place yet. No one's in place, period. It's just Matt Rhule as we know. And then after this week, we'll start to fill in those pieces. Yeah, it's going to be a long December of learning about what this staff's going to look like. Thank you for the 5. Spark Adventures, thank you for the $2. How do you feel about the hire? So I talked about it. So if you missed my entire breakdown, because I've been on here for an hour and a half, you probably came in late. To sum it up, I'm extremely excited about this hire. It's not the hire some people wanted, but it doesn't have to be. Sonny Dykes wasn't the hire TCU wanted. TCU's 11-0 en route to a playoff. Josh Heupel wasn't the hire Tennessee wanted. Tennessee made it to 9-2 this year. They could go 10-3 today, I think. Or 8, whatever. It doesn't matter what the record is. I can't remember it off the top of my head, and I'm not going to screw it up. Point is this. There are coaches out there who have big names, who go to schools, and they underdeliver. Scott Frost. There are coaches out there who have solid past, solid history, and they make you believe. They make me believe that maybe if they got to a school who gives them the support Nebraska can give them, maybe that 2-win season turned 7-win season turned 11-win season at Baylor could actually go, 5 wins, 9 wins, 13 wins? I believe in this guy as a culture builder, right? And because I believe in him as a culture builder, I think let's just focus on the immediate. This team next year is going to be more dialed in, more disciplined, more prepared, and ready to get us more wins than we had this year. I'm a believer in a bowl game. I'm a believer in Matt Rhule as of now, and there's still a lot left to be seen because we don't know who the staff is. I'm hopeful. That's kind of where I'm going to leave this. I'm hopeful, and I believe that the brightest days are ahead of us, and that's all I can ask for. And I hope that's what you're looking for too. with all that, hour and 34-minute clocked, and I am really appreciative of everyone who's been in here for this entire time, and people who just trickled in towards the end. If you want to catch the earlier parts of the stream, this is going to go up, and it's going to process whatever. It'll be up after this. And with all of that, I will see you guys later on in my next video. And yeah, go Big Red.